Alright everyone, welcome back. In this video we are going to learn about Sutra 1.33. In the previous video we learned about Sutra 1.32, the way in which the distractions of the mind are removed, right? So we focus on the alambana, which is one thing, right? One tattva. And you practice it, abhyasa of one tattva. So now we are going to switch topics here. Well, not really switch topics, because we're also going to discuss how the mind attains stability, which is another way, and we're going to see a sequence of sutras on how the mind attains stability. So this is another way. So in this video, we're going to learn about how to act, how to be, the mindset, the mentality that one needs to cultivate towards other individuals, right? And particularly the characteristics that exist within other individuals. What are these characteristics and how should we act towards them? Okay. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so by hitting the lotus icon on the bottom right of the screen. Feel free to like and share the video. And also feel free to visit the Academy of IndianPhilosophy.com for more information on videos, tutoring, so on and so forth. Okay. So let's begin. Sutra 1.33 states, Maitri Karuna Mudito Pekshanam Sukha Dukha Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanataschitta Prasadanam. Okay, so let's break this down. First and foremost, we are going to begin over here. So let's break this down right here. So Bhavanataha Chitta Prasadanam. This is going to be very important. So, Chitta Prasadanam. Here, we are looking at the word serenity, happiness, calmness. All of these synonyms here, calmness, right? Really, literally, it means removing things. So removing impurities, let's say. Removing impurities, so on and so forth. It's removing these particular things that are blockages. And it's purifying. It's actually purifying, purification. But we're going to look at it here as serenity because it's having to do with the mind. So the serenity of the mind, right? This is a compound. Serenity of the mind, bhavanataha, right? This is cultivation. We can say cultivating, right? We can say cultivating, not cultivation, because we're having this sort of pratyaya here, which we'll learn later. But it's cultivating, right? So serenity of the mind is, we have to insert, is attained from cultivating or producing, bringing into existence. Again, this is from the root bhu, right? Is to exist, again, or to be. So to be. Let me just write that again. So bhu. So we are bringing into existence. We're cultivating here. Now, what are we cultivating? And why are they emphasizing serenity of the mind? So this is very important, and we'll learn this as we gradually go through each of the qualities. But note here that this is a Yoga Sutra, a text for yogins, those individuals that go into the forest, that renounce, right, the social order, society, pleasures, etc. And so they're looking for the serenity of the mind. Okay? So let's go into what exactly we're cultivating here. So let's look at the beginning right here. So Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshanam. So let's break this down. Maitri Karuna Mudito or mudita upekshanam. Okay? So here we are describing 4 types of mindsets. Okay, 4 mindsets. 4 mindsets. The first mindset, maitri, is friendliness. Friendliness, okay? The next mindset is compassion. Karuna. Compassion. The next mindset is joy, right? Being glad or joyous. And the next mindset is indifference. Now, upeksha really means upa-iksh, to see, but upa, to look away from something, to disregard. Okay, so we're going to say disregard as well. Disregard. Upa-iksh, to look away from something. Something's going on, nope, not looking at it, no need for it. Okay? So 4 moods: friendliness, compassion, joy, and indifference. Towards what? So here we have the second term. Sukha, dukkha, punya, apunya, vishaya. So we're going to say vishayanam. Okay, so genitive ending. Vishayanam. Now, these are 4 types of people. Or we're going to say 4 types of characteristics, let's say first. 4 types of qualities. Right? Now, vishaya really means objects. Sometimes can mean a mental concept. But for now, we're going to say object. So what are the 4 objects, let's say? We're going to just roughly translate it here. Not roughly, but we're going to translate it as it is. What are the 4 objects? So happy, happiness, or happy. Dukkha, suffering. Punya, virtuous. And apunya, non-virtuous. Okay? Non-virtuous. Okay? So the objects that are happy, suffering, virtuous, and non-virtuous. What are the objects? Well, let's say these are characteristics. So far we're saying for these 4 types of mindsets, right? For the people who are happy, well, let's remove people for a second. For the quality or the characteristic of happiness, when you see this, cultivate friendliness towards this characteristic. When you see the characteristic or the quality of happiness, cultivate friendliness. When you see the characteristic or the quality of suffering, cultivate compassion, karuna. When you see the quality or characteristic of virtuousness, virtue, cultivate joy. And when you see the quality or characteristic of non-virtuousness, full of vice, cultivate indifference or upeksha, looking away. Now, characteristics don't just float in the air, right? They exist in people, things, places, etc. So now take these characteristics and put them into people. When you meet people who have a happy nature, right? Full of happiness, they're sharing this energy. Cultivate friendliness towards them. Be friendly towards them. When you meet people who have the characteristic of suffering, they're suffering in their different ways throughout the world and different conditions. Cultivate compassion for them. Okay, karuna, compassion. Understand their pain, right? Try to understand the context of what's going on and cultivate compassion for them. When you meet people who are full of virtue, and in virtue we're talking about dharma, right? So dharma is a complicated concept to understand, and it differs at times from different texts. So in yoga, we're going to say, let's say those who follow the Ashtanga Yoga path, which we will discuss later. So let's just leave it for virtuous now. But let's say those who are non-violent, those who are, really caring for other people, they're not stealing, they're not taking things, so on and so forth, right? So towards the virtuous people, cultivate joy. Joy. Rejoice in their presence, right? And for people who are non-virtuous, full of vice, evil-minded people, right? Apunya, cultivate indifference. Don't even pay attention to them. Disregard them. Look away. Now, it's really important here to understand that if we have a counter argument here, well, for the non-virtuous people, why don't you go and fight them, right? It's very important here. You're looking at chitta prasadanam. Chitta prasadanam, right? What did we say this was? Serenity. Serenity of the mind. You are trying to cultivate serenity of the mind. You're not trying to cultivate a numbness or an aggressiveness of the mind. You're not trying to cultivate a power of the mind that has to do with aggressiveness or power. Do you know what I'm saying? So you're trying to cultivate the serenity here. And so in a mind that's serene, it's non-confrontational. It's avoiding confrontation, but not from a place of fear, but from a place of knowing that confrontation is going to corrupt the individual or the yogin from the particular path of understanding Purusha and Samadhi, right? It's going to corrupt that path. And so people who are left typically, people who are left to these tasks are Kshatriyas, warriors, right? They're going to fight the battles of what's right and what's wrong. So there are people who are not in the forest, right? Who are part of society, who are going to deal with these issues of confrontation. The yogins typically are not going to go and fight and stand up for certain things, right? And it's not because they're afraid or fearful. It's because they're going for chitta prasadanam. And when you stand up for something, it's interesting and it's brave because you are voluntarily disturbing your mind to stand up for something. You're putting yourself in the presence of, fear, criticism, battle, a war, etc., to fight for what's right, right? So this isn't the yogic thing according to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, because this is for the yogins that go into the forest. It's very important to understand this, okay? So as the individual who is reading this text and in a different context, let's say modern context, it's really looking through the text, appreciating it in its whole context, and then picking and choosing what you can and cannot do, right? And what you would like to do, but not twisting the text. That's very important. So yes. Anyway, so going back to this, cultivate a mood of friendliness towards those who are happy, sukha. Cultivate compassion towards those who are suffering. Cultivate joy towards those who are virtuous, and cultivate indifference and disregarding towards those who are non-virtuous. Okay, and for the purpose of chitta prasadanam, let's look at the commentary. Tatra sarva pranishu sukha sambhoga apanneshu maitrim bhavayet. So, for those, among those four, right? Among the four that we just mentioned, again, for those beings, right, who have attained or cultivated happiness in themselves, maitrim bhavayet, right? Be friendly towards them. Then we have dukhiteshu karunam dukhita, those who are afflicted, those who are full of pain, right? Show karuna, compassion. Punyatmakeshu muditam, so towards those who are composed or possessing virtue, muditam, joy. Apunya shileshu upeksham, those who have the nature of non-virtue, right? Look away. Upeksham evamasya bhavayatah shuklaha dharmaha upajayate, right? And so thus of this, when this is cultivated, or from this cultivation, bhavayatah shuklaha dharmaha upajayate, the characteristic of Shukla, white purity, emerges. Upajayate is born. So what is this? Shuklaha dharmaha, right? So Shukla, and this dharma means quality here in this particular case. Shukla is, we're going to say, whoops, there's no H here. We are going to say here, we're going to relate it to the quality of sattva. Remember, sattva, the 3 gunas. If you don't know about this, watch my 3 guna video. Sattva, the quality of lightness, buoyance, purity that allows the mind to situate itself in a position where it can reflect the Purusha. It's so clear, right? So the quality of sattva, upajayate, emerges when you do this chitta prasadanam and you cultivate these attitudes towards these things, right? Tataha cha chittam prasidati, right? Then the mind becomes happy. Then the mind becomes serene. Then the mind becomes calm, right? Prasannam ekagram sthitipadam labhate. So, sthitipadam, so a mind that is stable, labhate, is attained. A stable mind is attained, right? A consistent and stable mind is attained. That is what? Prasannam ekagram, that is one-pointed and clear, okay? Prasannam ekagram sthitipadam labhate. So a mind that is clear, one-pointed and stable, or a stability that's clear and one-pointed is attained, okay? So this is the purpose of this. Again, the Yoga Sutra is describing here that to have chitta prasadanam, right? And chitta prasadanam allows one to continue in the path of yoga and samadhi. To have this, one must cultivate these moods towards these types of people. Okay? Now, it makes a lot of sense. You know, we come across different types of people with different types of attitudes, different types of moods, you know? And so there isn't this one way to interact with everybody. And so I suppose here the Yoga Sutra or Patanjali or Vyasa for that matter as well, they're trying to say here that, you know, in order to react to certain types of people, you have to cultivate certain types of moods. And doing so will be conducive for the realization of the Purusha. Okay? If you switch any of these, it just wouldn't make sense, right? So have friendliness towards the non-virtuous, right? Have compassion towards those who are happy. You know, it just doesn't make sense, right? So it's very interesting. It's very, how do you say, in alignment, right? It's like a magnet to things coming together and matching. Okay. So anyway, this should conclude Sutra 1.33. In the next video, we'll look at Sutra 1.34. Thank you very much.